The human girl's skull caved in as the pack-led mercenary slammed his armored fist into her head. 12-year-old Lily hit the ground, blonde hair matted with blood and brain matter. Solaris stood over the lifeless body, his pack-led armor splattered crimson. He had been hired to send a message, and this dead human child would do nicely. Colony alarms blared as citizens of New Eden rushed to find the source of the commotion. They found Lily's broken body discarded in the park, a gruesome discovery that sent shockwaves rippling through the colony and across the stars to Earth. Videos of the pack-led's butchery went viral, sparking outrage among the human population. The United Nations of Sol convened an emergency session, and President John Halverson delivered an impassioned speech, vowing to bring Solaris to justice. "Today, a human child was murdered on New Eden," Halverson declared, his voice tight with barely controlled fury. "Slaughtered by a pack-led mercenary without provocation or mercy. This cannot stand. This will not stand. Humanity demands justice, and we will have it." To prove Earth's resolve, the UNS authorized the immediate assembly and deployment of an overwhelming military force. 500,000 soldiers, led by the decorated Commander Billy Baker, a haunted man driven to prevent any more senseless death. The fleet set off for the pack-led homeworld, a planet undergoing a controversial terraforming project. But as the UNS fleet approached the alien planet, scanners detected an energy shield far more advanced than the pack-led were believed to possess. Factions within the pack-led government saw the looming human invasion as a chance to seize power, while radicals like the scientist Solaris viewed the Earthlings as an existential threat to the pack-led way of life. Human dropships punched through the turbulent atmosphere, rockets burning against the orange sky. The fate of both the pack-led and human races hung in the balance, as Baker and his troops prepared for a treacherous mission into uncharted territory. Commander Baker gripped his assault rifle tight, determined to bring the killer to justice no matter the cost. The human dropships hurtled through the turbulent pack-led atmosphere, flames licking at their hulls as they pierced the roiling storm clouds. Lightning crackled around them, the terraforming process transforming the once barren world into a hotbed of chaotic weather patterns. Inside the lead craft, Commander Billy Baker gripped the overhead handhold, his face hardened as the ship bucked and shuddered. 30 seconds to landing, the pilot shouted over the roar of the engines. Baker nodded, adrenaline surging through his veins. He checked his assault rifle one last time, the weapon heavy in his hands. Around him, his troops did the same, their faces grim with willpower. The dropship touched down with a bone-jarring thud, the ramp slamming open to reveal a harsh, alien landscape. Wind whipped across the rocky terrain, carrying with it the acrid scent of scorched metal and ozone. Baker leaped from the craft, boots crunching on the gravel, his soldiers fanning out behind him. No sooner had they established a perimeter than a phalanx of heavily armed pack-led soldiers emerged from the shadows, their weapons trained on the humans. At their head stood General Kravox, his dark eyes glinting with malice. "Withdraw immediately," he growled, his voice laden with menace. "Your presence here violates pack-led sovereignty." Baker stepped forward, his rifle held low but ready. "I'm here to discuss the surrender of the war criminal Solaris and the prevention of further attacks on human colonies. Take me to your leaders." Kravox sneered. "The only thing we will give you is a quick death." Suddenly, a shot rang out, the sound echoing across the barren plain. A pack-led soldier crumpled to the ground, a look of surprise etched on his face. In an instant, the air erupted with the chatter of automatic weapons fire as both sides opened up, muzzle flashes strobing in the dim light. Baker dove for cover behind a boulder, his troops returning fire. Bullets pinged off the rocks around them, kicking up puffs of dust and debris. The human soldiers were well-trained and disciplined, but the pack-led had the advantage of numbers and familiar terrain. As the battle raged, Baker's wrist communicator beeped insistently. He ducked down, pressing the device to his ear. "Baker here." "Commander," a muffled voice said, "I have information about Solaris, but you're walking into a trap." Baker's eyes narrowed. "Who is this? How do you know about Solaris?" "No time to explain," the voice replied, urgent and tinged with fear. "Zorax is using you as a pawn. Solaris is on the other side of the planet at these coordinates." A string of numbers flashed on Baker's display. Baker hesitated, torn between his duty to his troops and the burning need for justice. If this was a trap, he could be leading his soldiers to their deaths. But if the information was true, he might be able to end this conflict before it escalated further. A plasma grenade detonated nearby, showering Baker with dirt and rubble. He knew he had to make a decision fast before the pack lead overwhelmed their position. Gritting his teeth, he activated his comm link. Lieutenant Hawkins, take half the troops and hold this position. I'm taking a team to investigate a lead on Solaris. If we're not back in 48 hours, assume the worst and call for reinforcements. Hawkins's voice crackled over the link, strained but resolute. Understood, sir. Good hunting. Baker signaled to a dozen of his best soldiers, their faces streaked with sweat and grime. They nodded, ready to follow him into the unknown. As the rest of the troops laid down covering fire, Baker and his team slipped away into the shadows, the fate of two worlds resting on their shoulders. Commander Baker's mind raced as he assessed the situation. The anonymous tip about Solaris couldn't be ignored, but neither could he abandon his troops in the heat of battle. He made a swift decision. Lieutenant Reeves, Baker barked into his comm, take a small team and investigate these coordinates. He transmitted the data with a tap of his wrist computer. The rest of us will hold the line here. Understood, sir, Reeves responded, his voice steady despite the chaos around them. As Reeves assembled his team, Baker turned his attention back to the firefight. Plasma bolts sizzled through the air, leaving scorch marks on the rocky terrain. The acrid smell of ozone mixed with the copper tang of blood. Push forward, Baker shouted, leading a charge against Krevox's forces. Human soldiers advanced in coordinated waves, their boots crunching on the alien soil. Across the battlefield, General Krevox sneered at the human assault. He activated a device on his wrist, and suddenly the air shimmered with energy. A volley of missiles erupted from hidden launchers, far more advanced than Earth's intelligence had indicated. Take cover, Baker yelled, diving behind a twisted piece of metal as explosions rocked the ground. Debris rained down, pinging off his armor. When the dust settled, Baker saw with horror that nearly a quarter of his front line had been wiped out. Meanwhile, Reeves led his small team across the treacherous pack-led landscape. Sergeant Emily Harding, their medic, kept a watchful eye on the group's vitals as they navigated through a field of steaming geysers. Watch your step, Corporal Alex Novak warned, his eyes glued to a handheld scanner. The terraformings made this whole area unstable. As if to punctuate his words, a geyser erupted mere feet from their position, spewing toxic gases into the air. The team scrambled back, narrowly avoiding the noxious cloud. There, Harding pointed. I see structures ahead. They approached cautiously, finding themselves on the outskirts of a hidden pack-led settlement. The buildings were a mix of advanced technology and makeshift additions, as if rapidly expanded. Novak's scanner beeped insistently. I'm picking up some weird energy readings from that central building, he whispered. Reeves nodded, signaling the team to move in. They slipped through empty streets, the eerie quiet broken only by distant sounds of the ongoing battle. Inside the central building, they discovered a laboratory filled with strange equipment. Holographic displays flickered with data streams and complex formulae. What is all this? Harding asked, her voice hushed. Novak's eyes widened as he scanned the readouts. It looks like terraforming data, but it's been weaponized somehow. Reeves felt a chill run down his spine. We need to get this intel back to the commander, he said. But first, we complete the mission. Let's find Solaris. Back at the main battle, Baker's forces were being steadily pushed back. The pack-led weapons tore through their defenses with terrifying efficiency. Baker gritted his teeth, knowing each order he gave could mean more lives lost. A massive explosion suddenly rocked the battlefield, catching both sides off guard. Baker watched in horror as a massive sinkhole opened up, swallowing vehicles and soldiers alike. Through the dust and confusion, a lone pack-led soldier approached with his hands raised. I surrender, he shouted. My name is Talon. I can help you. Baker hesitated, his rifle trained on the pack-led. Why should I trust you? Talon's eyes were wide with fear and desperation. Because Zorax will destroy us all if we don't stop him, human and pack-led alike. Baker lowered his rifle, studying the pack-led soldier's face. Talon's eyes darted nervously between the human commander and the chaos erupting around them. "Talk fast," Baker growled. "What do you mean Zorax will destroy us all?" Before Talon could respond, another explosion rocked the battlefield. The ground beneath their feet shifted, cracks spiderwebbing across the rocky terrain. Baker grabbed Talon's arm, dragging him behind cover as chunks of earth rained down. "We need to move," Baker shouted to his remaining troops. "Fall back to the ridge." As they retreated, Talon explained between labored breaths. "Zorax, he's using the terraforming technology as a weapon. It's not just about reshaping planets anymore. He wants to control them, to use them against anyone who opposes the pack-led." Baker's calm crackled to life. "Commander, this is Reeves. We found something you need to see." "Go ahead, Lieutenant." "Sir, we've infiltrated a hidden facility. There's no easy way to say this. They're experimenting on people, humans and pack-led alike." Baker's eyes sharp. "What kind of experiments?" "Genetic modifications, sir. They're trying to create living weapons capable of terraforming through sheer force of will. But the results are horrific." The implications hit Baker like a physical blow. He turned to Talon, who nodded grimly. "It's true," the pack-led defector confirmed. "There's a growing resistance against Zorax, but we need help. Your help." Baker weighed his options, acutely aware of the dwindling number of soldiers around him. Another barrage from Kravox's forces could wipe them out entirely. "All right," he decided, "we'll work together. But if this is a trap—" Talon shook his head vehemently. "No trap. I swear on my life." Baker activated his comm again. "Reeves, we're coming to you. Send coordinates for a rendezvous point." "Understood, sir. Be careful. The terrain is treacherous." As if to emphasize Reeves's warning, a geyser of superheated steam erupted nearby, scalding two soldiers who strayed too close. Their screams cut off abruptly as the ground beneath them liquefied, swallowing them whole. Baker turned to Talon. "Lead the way, and pray your resistance friends show up soon." They set off across the volatile landscape, every step a potential death trap. Twice they had to backtrack to avoid pools of bubbling acid that hadn't been there moments before. The planet itself seemed to be rebelling against their presence. Kravox's loyalists harried them at every turn. Plasma bolts sizzled past, leaving scorch marks on the rocks. Baker's troops returned fire, their projectile weapons seeming almost quaint in comparison. "There!" Talon pointed to a narrow ravine. "That's our best chance to lose them." They scrambled down the steep incline, loose stones clattering beneath their feet. At the bottom, they found themselves face to face with a group of armed pack-led. "Wait!" Talon called out as both sides raised their weapons. "They're with me!" A grizzled pack-led lowered his rifle slightly. "Talon, we thought you were dead." "Not yet," Talon replied, "and I've brought help." As the two groups warily integrated, Baker received another transmission from Reeves. "Commander, we're at the rendezvous point, but something's wrong. Solaris, he's... oh, God." The transmission cut off abruptly. Baker's blood ran cold. "Double time," he ordered. "Move!" They raced through the ravine, the sound of pursuit fading behind them. As they emerged onto a plateau, they saw Reeves's team in the distance, surrounded by heavily armed pack-led, led by a figure Baker recognized from the briefings, Solaris. The mercenary held Reeves at gunpoint, a cruel smile twisting his features. "Ah, Commander Baker," Solaris called out. "So good of you to join us. I believe it's time we had a chat about the future of our species." Baker raised his rifle, but Solaris pressed his weapon harder against Reeves's head. "I wouldn't if I were you," the mercenary warned. "After all, we have so much to discuss, starting with how I'm going to reshape both our worlds." Baker's finger tensed on the trigger, his mind racing for a solution as Solaris's mad laughter echoed across the alien landscape. Baker's mind raced, his rifle trained on Solaris as the mercenary held Reeves at gunpoint. The tension was palpable, the air thick with the acrid smell of plasma discharge, and the metallic tang of blood. "Lower your weapon, Baker," Solaris sneered, "or I'll paint these rocks with your lieutenant's brains." Baker's heart made, but he slowly lowered his rifle. "What do you want, Solaris?" The mercenary's eyes glinted with malice. "What I've always wanted? Power. And now, thanks to pack-led technology, I have the means to reshape entire worlds." A commotion from the pack-led ranks drew their attention. A figure pushed through, her elaborate robes marking her as someone of importance. "Counselor Vaxra," Talon gasped. "What are you doing here?" The pack-led counselor's eyes darted between Baker and Solaris. "I've come to negotiate a ceasefire. This madness must end before—" Her words were cut short by the whine of approaching engines. Kravox's forces had caught up with them. "Ambush!" Baker shouted as plasma bolts rained down from the ridge above. Chaos erupted. Baker dove for cover, pulling Vaxra down with him as the air filled with weapons fire. Solaris used the distraction to retreat, dragging Reeves with him. "We need to fall back," Talon yelled over the din of battle. Baker nodded, then turned to Vaxra. "Counselor, we need your help. There's a resistance forming against Zorax. If we work together—" A stray plasma bolt struck the ground inches from them, showering them with superheated rock. Vaxra's eyes widened in fear and persistence. "Follow me," she said. "I know a safe place." They retreated under heavy fire, Kravox's forces pressing their advantage. Baker's remaining troops provided covering fire as they made their way to a hidden cave entrance. Once inside, Vaxra activated a force field, sealing the entrance. The sounds of battle became muffled, replaced by the labored breathing of the survivors. "Commander," Vaxra said, her voice grave, "what I'm about to tell you mustn't leave this room. There are those of us in the pack-led government who have been working against Zorax in secret. We believe an alliance with Earth may be our only hope." Baker's eyebrows rose. "We?" Vaxra nodded. "Myself, Zalara, and Ryler. We've been gathering evidence of Zorax's crimes, but now with Solaris involved—" The cave shook violently, dust and small rocks raining down from the ceiling. The force field flickered ominously. "They've brought in heavy weapons," Talon warned. "The shield won't hold for long." Baker turned to Vaxra. "We need to move. Where can we go?" The counselor's face was grim. "There's an old research facility nearby. If we can reach it—" Another explosion rocked the cave. The force field collapsed in a shower of sparks. Kravox's troops poured in, weapons blazing. "Go!" Vaxra shouted, pushing Baker towards a back passage. "I'll hold them off." Before Baker could protest, Vaxra charged the enemy, her ornate robes billowing as she fired a concealed weapon. Her valiant stand bought them precious seconds to escape. They emerged onto a barren plain, the sounds of pursuit close behind. In the distance, Baker saw a squat, angular building, the research facility. Suddenly, the ground beneath their feet began to tremble. A massive fissure opened up, swallowing several of Kravox's pursuing soldiers. The tremors intensified, spreading rapidly across the landscape. "It's Solaris!" Talon shouted, his eyes wide with fear. "He's activated the weapons!" Baker watched in horror as the capital city in the distance began to crumble, massive sinkholes appearing and swallowing entire buildings. The screams of millions of pack-led civilians carried on the wind. "We need to find Zalara," Talon said urgently. "She's our only hope of stopping this." "Who's Zalara?" Baker asked as they raced towards the research facility, the ground still shaking beneath their feet. Talon's expression was grim. "An exiled scientist. She knows more about this planet's systems than anyone. If anyone can stop Solaris's weapons, it's her." As they reached the facility's entrance, Baker's comm crackled to life. Reeves's voice came through, strained but alive. "Commander, Solaris is gone. He's activated more weapons. The entire planet is tearing itself apart." Baker's fist clenched. "Hold on, Lieutenant. We're going to find a way to stop this. Just stay alive." They entered the facility, the doors sealing behind them. As Talon led them deeper into the complex, Baker couldn't shake the feeling that they were running out of time. The fate of two worlds now rested on finding one exiled pack-led scientist. The facility's stark corridors echoed with their hurried footsteps as Talon led Baker deeper into the complex. Fluorescent lights flickered overhead, casting eerie shadows across the sterile walls. "Zalara's lab should be just ahead," Talon panted, his eyes darting nervously between intersecting hallways. They rounded a corner and found themselves face to face with a sealed blast door. Talon punched a series of codes into the adjacent panel, muttering under his breath. The door hissed open, revealing a cavernous chamber filled with humming machinery and holographic displays. A slender pack-led figure stood hunched over a central console, her fingers flying across the controls. She spun to face them, her eyes widening in recognition. "Talon, what are you—" Her gaze fell on Baker, and she instinctively reached for a nearby weapon. "Wait," Talon held up his hands. "He's here to help. Solaris has activated the weapons. The entire planet is tearing itself apart." Zalara's grip on the weapon loosened, her expression shifting from suspicion to grim understanding. "I feared this day would come," she said softly. Baker stepped forward, his voice urgent. "We need your help to stop this. What can you tell us about these weapons?" Zalara's eyes clouded with memory. "Solaris and we were colleagues once. We dreamed of reshaping barren worlds, creating new homes for our people." She shook her head. But Solaris became obsessed with the destructive potential. He saw it as a way to remake the universe in his image. She moved to a large display, bringing up schematics of the planet's core. The weapons draw power directly from the planetary core. It makes them incredibly potent, but also vulnerable. We have a small window to shut them down before the damage becomes irreversible. A violent tremor shook the facility, sending equipment crashing to the floor. Baker steadied himself against a console. "How do we do it?" Zalara's fingers danced across the screens, bringing up a map of a heavily fortified compound. "We need to reach Solaris's control center. From there, we can disable the primary weapon and sever the connection to the others." Baker's calm crackled to life. Reeves's voice came through, strained but determined. "Commander, we've regrouped with the resistance forces. What are your orders?" Baker studied the compound schematics, his tactical mind racing. "Lieutenant, I need you to lead an assault on the outer defenses. Create as much chaos as you can. We'll use the distraction to infiltrate through these underground tunnels." He highlighted a route on the display. "Understood, sir," Reeves replied. "We'll give them hell." As Baker outlined the plan to Zalara and Talon, another figure burst into the lab. Counselor Ryler, his ornate robes torn and singed, stumbled towards them. "The capital, it's gone," he gasped, "swallowed by the earth itself." Baker clasped the shaken Packled's shoulder. "We have a plan to stop this, but we need your help. Are you with us?" Ryler straightened, his eyes hardening with dedication. "Lead the way, Commander." They moved swiftly through the underbelly of the Packled world, navigating a maze of ancient tunnels and abandoned infrastructure. Above, they could hear the muffled sounds of battle as Reeves's team engaged Solaris's forces. As they neared the compound, a bone-shaking rumble reverberated through the tunnels. The very air seemed to vibrate with ominous energy. "He's activated the central weapon," Zalara breathed, her face pale. "We're running out of time." They emerged into the lower levels of Solaris's stronghold, immediately coming under fire from human mercenaries, guarding the approach to the control room. Baker and Ryler returned fire, their shots echoing in the confined space. "Cover me!" Baker shouted, sprinting towards a better position. A plasma bolt sizzled past his ear, close enough to singe his hair. Ryler leapt from cover, laying down suppressing fire. In that moment of heroism, a stray shot caught him in the chest. He crumpled to the ground, clutching the smoldering wound. Baker dragged the fallen Packled to safety, his mind racing for a solution as Zalara tended to Ryler. The control room was just ahead, but the mercenaries' fire was too intense. Zalara's eyes met Baker's, a look of unyielding commitment settling over her features. "I can get us in," she said, "but you won't like how." Before Baker could respond, Zalara stepped into the open, her hands raised. "Solaris," she called out. "It's me. I've come to talk." The gunfire ceased. A tense silence fell over the corridor. Zalara? Solaris's voice crackled over the intercom, a mix of surprise and suspicion. After all this time... Let me in, old friend, Zalara replied, her voice steady despite the tremors racking the compound. We need to talk about what we've created and what we've destroyed. A long moment passed. Then, with a hiss of hydraulics, the control room doors slowly opened. Baker helped Ryler to his feet, supporting the wounded Pakled. They followed Zalara into the heart of Solaris's domain, acutely aware that every second brought them closer to planetary annihilation. The control room was a dizzying array of holographic displays and pulsing energy conduits. At its center stood Solaris, his eyes wild with the intoxication of power. Welcome, he said, a maniacal grin spreading across his face, to the birth of a new world order. Order, Solaris commanded, his voice dripping with artificial calm. That's all I seek. A new world, purged of chaos and corruption. Baker's hand inched towards his sidearm. At what cost? Millions dead? A planet in ruins? Solaris's eyes flickered to Baker's movement. In a blur, he raised a sleek energy weapon. Don't, he warned. A violent tremor shook the room, sending equipment crashing to the floor. Zalara stumbled, catching herself on a nearby console. Her fingers flew across the controls, eyes scanning the data streaming across the screen. Solaris, listen to me, she pleaded. The weapon's unstable. If we don't shut it down now, the entire planet will... Her words were cut short by a blinding flash of light. The control room's view screen erupted with images of devastation. Massive fissures split the landscape, swallowing entire cities. The planet's crust buckled and heaved, torn apart by unimaginable forces. Baker watched in horror as the Pakled capital, already ravaged by earlier attacks, vanished into a yawning chasm. Millions of lives snuffed out in an instant. Solaris's maniacal grin faltered. No, he whispered. This isn't... It wasn't supposed to... Zalara's voice cut through his shock. Help me shut it down, she yelled, her fingers a blur over the controls. For a moment, Solaris hesitated. Then, with a look of iron will, he joined Zalara at the console. Together, they worked frantically to contain the calamity they had unleashed. Baker's comm crackled to life. Commander! Reeves's voice was barely audible over the sounds of battle. We can't hold them much longer. Fall back to the evac point, Baker ordered. We're shutting it down. Minutes stretched into an eternity as Zalara and Solaris fought to regain control of the terraforming weapons. Warning klaxons blared throughout the compound. The floor beneath their feet rumbled ominously. Finally, Zalara stepped back from the console, her face ashen. It's done, she said quietly. We've stopped the cascade effect, but... She trailed off, unable to finish the thought. Baker moved to the view screen, taking in the full scope of the devastation. The Pakled homeworld was unrecognizable. Vast swaths of the surface had been reshaped, whole continents altered beyond recognition. We need to evacuate, Baker said, his voice hoarse. Now! They made their way through the chaos of the crumbling compound, Baker supporting a shell-shocked Solaris, while Zalara guided them through the maze of corridors. They emerged into a hellscape of smoke and ash, the very air thick with the acrid stench of destruction. Reeves' voice crackled over the comm once more. Commander, we've secured a landing zone. ETA 2 minutes. As they stumbled towards the extraction point, a familiar figure appeared through the haze. Ryler, his ornate robes in tatters, clutched a plasma rifle in trembling hands. Is it done? The Pakled counselor asked, his eyes haunted. Baker nodded grimly. It's done. But the cost... The whine of approaching engines cut through the air. A battered shuttle touched down, kicking up clouds of debris. Reeves emerged from the craft, his face streaked with grime and blood. We need to move, he shouted over the din. Kravox's forces are regrouping. They piled into the shuttle, the engines straining as it lifted off. Through the viewports, Baker watched the Pakled homeworld recede, its once familiar continents now twisted into alien shapes. His comm unit chirped, displaying an incoming transmission from Earth's orbital fleet. Admiral Samantha Davies's face appeared on the small screen, her expression grave. Commander Baker, she began, I'm afraid our troubles are just the beginning. Baker listened intently as Davies relayed the intel about Solaris's secret off-world base. As the Admiral spoke, he felt the weight of responsibility settle even more heavily on his shoulders. The pack-led homeworld might be lost, but there was still a chance to prevent further catastrophe. The shuttle shuddered as it broke atmosphere, joining the frantic evacuation efforts already underway. Baker turned to his battered team, seeing grit etched on their faces despite their exhaustion. We're not done yet, he said, his voice resolute. There's one more mission. We're not done yet, Baker said, his voice resolute. There's one more mission. He relayed Admiral Davies's intel about Solaris's secret off-world base to the team. Exhausted faces hardened with renewed purpose. Lieutenant Reeves, Baker addressed his second-in-command, I need you to lead a strike team. Your target is an abandoned human mining facility that's been overrun by pack-led scavengers. Intel suggests it may hold the key to locating Solaris's true base of operations. Reeves nodded grimly. Consider it done, sir. As the shuttle docked with the orbiting fleet, Baker and Reeves quickly assembled a team. Within hours, they were en route to the derelict facility, leaving Baker to coordinate with what remained of the pack-led resistance. The mining facility loomed before them, a hulking mass of twisted metal and flickering lights. Reeves signaled his team forward, their boots clanging softly against the worn deck plating. Plasma fire erupted from hidden alcoves. Talon, rushing to provide cover, took a direct hit to his midsection. He crumpled, smoke rising from the charred wound. Man down, Reeves shouted, dragging Talon to relative safety. Push forward, we need to breach that door. The team surged ahead, their weapons blazing. With a screech of protesting metal, the main airlock gave way. They poured into the facility's grimy interior, only to find themselves face to face with a mountain of muscle and crude armor. Croxigar, one of the pack-led team members whispered in awe. The hulking pack-led warlord raised a massive hand, and the firefight ceased. His gravelly voice filled the chamber. You are bold humans to attack us here, but your timing is fortuitous. Reeves kept his weapon trained on Croxigar. Explain yourself. I was General Krevox's most trusted officer, Croxigar rumbled, until I saw the true horror of Solaris's ambitions. Now, I hunt his collaborators across the stars. A tense negotiation followed. Croxigar granted them access to his prisoners, sniveling, broken figures who had once been Solaris's inner circle. Under Reeves' merciless interrogation, they revealed the location of a secret asteroid base where Solaris's protege, Viscerala, continued his nightmarish work. A living, terraforming weapon, Reeves muttered, his face pale. We have to stop this. As Reeves's team prepared for their next assault, Baker faced his own impossible task on the pack-led homeworld. The planet convulsed around them, Solaris's unleashed terraforming cycle tearing the world apart. There's still a chance, Ryler insisted, presenting a prototype device. This resonance emitter could disrupt the process, but we need to reach the control hub. Baker studied the schematics, his heart sinking. The hub was now an impregnable fortress, surrounded by roiling energy fields and automated defenses. We don't have the firepower, he admitted. Ryler's eyes met his, a shared understanding passing between them. Baker activated his comm, broadcasting on all frequencies. This is Commander Baker to any Earth vessels in range. We need immediate orbital fire support on the following coordinates. Admiral Davies's voice crackled back, heavy with the weight of what Baker was asking. Acknowledged, Commander. You understand the collateral damage this will cause? Baker closed his eyes, the faces of countless pack-led civilians flashing before him. I do, Admiral. We have no choice. The sky lit up with searing lances of energy as Davies' ships opened fire. The bombardment tore through the planet's defenses, clearing a path to the hub, but leaving devastation in its wake. Now, Baker roared, leading Ryler and a handful of survivors on a desperate charge. They fought their way through the chaos, Baker's world narrowing to the next target, the next obstacle. Pain blossomed in his side as a stray shot found its mark, but he pushed on. They reached the hub's inner sanctum, alarms blaring and systems overloading around them. Baker slumped against a console, blood seeping between his fingers. "Ryler," he gasped, "the device, you have to—" The Pakled counselor nodded, his own injuries evident in his labored movements. With trembling hands, he activated the resonance emitter. A high-pitched whine filled the air, building to a crescendo. The floor bucked beneath them as the shockwave rippled outward, destabilizing Solaris's network of terraforming weapons. But the victory came at a cataclysmic cost. The bombardment and the resonance wave's after effects leveled entire cities. The death toll was beyond comprehension. Baker lay on the quaking ground, his life ebbing away. Ryler knelt beside him, both of them broken and spent. "Was it worth it?" Baker whispered, his vision growing dim. Ryler's response was lost as another tremor shook the facility. In the distance, a new alarm began to sound. As the facility crumbled around them, Baker's world faded to black. The last thing he heard was the roar of collapsing infrastructure and Ryler's desperate cries for help. Aboard the captured Pakled shuttle, Lieutenant Reeves gripped the controls tightly, his squeezing hard with tension. The small craft shuddered as it broke atmosphere, leaving behind the devastated Pakled homeworld. His strike team, battered but determined, huddled in the cramped passenger compartment. "Set course for these coordinates," Reeves ordered, inputting the location of Solaris's secret asteroid base. "Viscerala's waiting for us." The shuttle streaked through space, its engines straining. As they approached the base, Reeves's stomach churned at the sight before them. The asteroid's surface bristled with organic growths, pulsing and writhing in the vacuum. "What in hell?" one of the team members whispered. They docked with difficulty, the base's altered biology fighting against standard airlock procedures. As the team disembarked, the stench of rot and chemical decay assaulted their senses. Reeves raised his weapon, scanning the grotesque corridor ahead. "Stay alert. Intel suggests Viscerala's been experimenting." They moved deeper into the facility, stepping over viscous puddles and ducking under throbbing, vein-like conduits. A distant shriek echoed through the halls, inhuman and filled with pain. Rounding a corner, they came face to face with the source of the cry. A figure lurched towards them, more alien than human. Its limbs stretched and reshaped themselves, skin bubbling with terraforming potential, gone horribly wrong. "Open fire!" Reeves shouted. Plasma bolts tore into the creature, but it kept coming. With a sickening lurch, its arm elongated, becoming a razor-sharp tendril that sliced through one of Reeves's team members like butter. They fell back, retreating deeper into the maze-like structure. More monstrosities emerged from side passages, their warped forms defying description. The team fought desperately, their weapons barely slowing the onslaught. "This way!" Croxigar's voice boomed over their comms. The Pakled defector had hacked into the base's systems, guiding them towards Viscerala's inner sanctum. Reeves and his dwindling team finally burst through a set of reinforced doors. Inside, they found a scene of scientific horror. Viscerala, her eyes gleaming with madness, stood before a pulsating orb of swirling genetic material. "You're too late," she cackled. "My creation will remake the galaxy." Ryler, face set in fierce dedication, lunged for a nearby control panel. Alarms blared as he initiated an emergency decompression sequence. "No!" Viscerala shrieked. In a fluid motion, she plunged a syringe into her own neck, injecting herself with the swirling mutagen. Reeves watched in horror as Viscerala's body contorted, flesh and metal fusing into a nightmarish new form. The asteroid base began to break apart around them, chunks of rock and twisted metal flying into the void. "Fall back to the shuttle," Reeves ordered, dragging a wounded teammate. They sprinted through disintegrating corridors, the vacuum of space nipping at their heels. Reeves and Ryler were the last to dive into the airlock, sealing it just as the section behind them was torn away. The shuttle detached from the doomed base, narrowly avoiding debris as Reeves piloted them to safety. Through the view screen, they watched as the asteroid facility shattered, revealing the monstrous form of Viscerala, now more terraforming abomination than sentient being. Reeves's comm crackled to life. Admiral Davies's face appeared, her expression grim. "Report, Lieutenant. What's the situation?" As Reeves relayed the horrifying details of their encounter, The weight of their failure settled heavily upon him. Viscerala was loose, capable of spreading her mutagen across the stars. And somewhere on the ravaged Pakled homeworld, Commander Baker's fate remained unknown. The shuttle limped towards the Earth fleet, carrying with it a warning of the nightmare that now threatened the entire galaxy. The shuttle limped towards Earth's battered fleet, carrying a warning of the nightmare now loose among the stars. Reeves's hands trembled on the controls as he guided the craft into a docking bay, his mind replaying the horrific transformation they had witnessed. Admiral Davies met them as they disembarked, her face ashen. "We've been tracking Viscerala's signature. It's unlike anything we've ever seen." For weeks, they pursued the mutated abomination across the galaxy. Reeves stood on the bridge of the flagship, watching holographic displays chart Viscerala's path of destruction. Desolate worlds flashed by, each a testament to her genocidal ambition. Ryler approached, his eyes sunken from sleepless nights spent analyzing data. "The mutagen is evolving, adapting to new environments. If we don't stop her soon—" A proximity alarm blared, cutting him off. A communications officer shouted, "Incoming transmission! It's from the Pakled homeworld." Static filled the view screen, resolving into a grainy image of Commander Baker. His face was gaunt, scarred, but undeniably alive. "This is Baker to any Earth forces. We're still here, still fighting. But we need help now." Reeves felt his heart race. He turned to Davies, who nodded grimly. "Prepare for orbital drop," she ordered. The descent was chaos. Reeves's drop pod shuddered violently as it plummeted through a maelstrom of debris and radioactive storms. The ground rushed up to meet them, impact jarring his bones. As the hatch blew open, Reeves emerged into a hellscape. The Pakled world was unrecognizable, its surface warped and twisted. In the distance, guttural howls pierced the air, Viscerala's mutated forces converging. Baker's remaining troops fought with desperate ferocity to secure the landing zone. Reeves sprinted through the carnage, plasma bolts sizzling past him. He found Baker in a makeshift command center, bent over tactical displays. "Took you long enough," Baker said, a ghost of a smile crossing his haggard features. As they shared intel, the true horror of their situation became clear. Baker's eyes burned with iron will as he spoke. "Viscerala's endgame. She's going to use this entire planet as a breeding ground for her contagion." Ryler, who had insisted on joining the ground team, interjected. "We might have one shot." He outlined his plan, detailing the risks. Baker listened intently, then revealed his own dire situation. "I'm infected," he said quietly, "but I can buy us time." The base rocked with explosions as Viscerala's forces pressed their attack. Reeves rallied what remained of their combined forces, human and Pakled alike. As they prepared for the final push, Baker pulled him aside. "Listen carefully," Baker said, his voice low and urgent. He pressed a data chip into Reeves's hand. "When this is over, if we succeed, you'll need these coordinates." Before Reeves could respond, a deafening roar filled the air. Through the shattered windows, they saw Viscerala's nexus form rising on the horizon, a writhing mass of corrupted flesh and metal that defied description. "Now!" Baker shouted. The battle erupted in full force. Reeves fought his way through waves of mutated monstrosities, each more horrific than the last. He watched as Ryler's team made their desperate push towards the orbital tethers, knowing their sacrifice might be their only chance. A blinding flash lit up the sky. Baker had detonated the isotope payload, his ultimate attempt to slow Viscerala's advance. In that moment of chaos, Reeves seized his opportunity. He charged towards the pulsing heart of the Nexus, reactor core in hand. As he reached the grotesque inner sanctum, Reeves felt revulsion rise in his throat. Viscerala's consciousness permeated everything, a malevolent presence pressing against his mind. With trembling hands, he activated the overload sequence. The world exploded in light and sound. Reeves was thrown clear, his body battered by the shockwave. As he fought to stay conscious, he saw the Nexus collapse in on itself, imploding in a cataclysmic vortex of energy. In the aftermath, Reeves found Ryler barely clinging to life amidst the rubble. He hoisted the pack lid onto his shoulder, stumbling towards the last functioning shuttle. As they lifted off from the dying world, Reeves inputted the mysterious coordinates Baker had given him. The remnants of Earth's fleet limped through space, following Reeves's lead. They emerged from warp to find a lifeless, frozen world. But as they approached, long dormant systems flickered to life, revealing vast shipyards and half-built colonies. A flicker of hope kindled in Reeves's chest. Then a sensor alarm shattered the moment. On the edge of the system, a new horror was taking shape. Viserala reborn as a sentient singularity, consuming everything in its path. Reeves exchanged a look with Ryler. No words were needed. They had found their sanctuary, but the true battle was only beginning.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.